You're listening to Dadsplaining, a weekly chronicle of all the weirdest, messiest, grossest, and funniest parts of fatherhood, hosted by two first-time dads. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Brandon.
Today is Wednesday, May 16th, and you are listening to episode 5 of Dadsplaining. Today we are going to be talking about the first few days after delivery. So, recovering in the hospital, coming home, introducing the baby to the world, all of that wacky, fun stuff. But first, Brandon, how's your week going?
So, it's been a very interesting week, just getting more and more time with our son and just kind of getting used to him. You know, he's almost 2 months old at this point. We've certainly started to notice more of his personality coming out. And one of the things that I've kind of felt like he really likes to do now at night, he kind of goes through, you know, what I've heard referred to as the witching hour, where like at nighttime he gets a little more fussy than normal, and it's a little bit less obvious why. It's not the diaper, it's not other things. But he does what I like to call anger feeding, is what I feel like is happening. So he'll latch on for breastfeeding, and you know he's hungry, you know he wants the food, but even while he's feeding, he's angry about it, and he's kind of fussing while he's breastfeeding, and he's like making all these like, you know, like, I'm upset noises. But if you stop at all, then he will scream because he's not being fed.
Yeah.
And so then you throw him right back in to continue feeding, and then he will continue screaming. So it's beautiful, man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I remember those days. I mean, that still happens every once in a while. And I think the witching hour, it's like amplified by the fact that you're already short on sleep, and it's that time of night where you're used to falling asleep.
So exhausted.
Yeah, but you can't. And not only can you not fall asleep, but you've got to put this other living thing ahead of your own needs. And yeah, it causes a little bit of understandable tension.
So much rage.
Oh yeah.
Try to do our best.
Oh man, yeah. And I think that they have they're kind of on a delayed system emotionally, because you know, they'll cry because they're hungry, and then you'll start to feed them, and then they're still upset because they're hungry, even though they're eating.
Yeah.
And then I think you mentioned this. He'll stop to express his frustration, even though he's eating now, and then stopping will make him cry more. So it's like this perpetual cycle.
Yeah, absolutely, Jesse. Good point there, because I do think we're starting to feel some of that now. We're not as far along as you guys are, so I'm starting to sense that sometimes you just got to cry. He just wants to get it out.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes there really is no rhyme or reason.
Yeah.
You know, they're new to the world. They're new to all of these sensations and feelings, and sometimes, I don't know, I think it's just the inexplainable things. How old is Noah now?
Almost 2 months. It'll be 2 months on, Sunday, the 19th.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know.
So before we get too much into it, I wanted to kind of catch up with what David's up to this week.
Let's do it.
So David is 6 months old now. 6 months and let's see, what is today? Is it 16? 6 months and 2 weeks today. And I got a text from my wife today, and so he's on solid foods now. He's not exclusively, but he is eating. We started out with squash, and then we went to sweet potatoes next, and now we're on oatmeal. We tried rice cereal. That was a bust. He hated it.
Yikes. Everyone hates it.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Yeah, oatmeal he totally loved, though.
Nice.
That was a big hit. And then today he ate sweet potatoes while I was at work, and my wife said he like went through an entire jar in like 20 minutes.
Awesome.
And then had the most disgusting poop that he has had to date.
It was not sweet.
No. And so that's one thing that doctors will tell you when you have the baby. It's like, be prepared. Right now, like in the beginning, the infancy stages, when he's on breast milk or formula, whatever you're doing, the poop is not going to smell that bad.
Right.
Get some real food in him, and then you get the real poop smell.
You get the stench.
Yeah, and it gets, you know, different color and different consistency.
For
and
sure.
All that.
I'm still like so thankful that he's not on solid foods, because like he of course poops many times a day, and you have to change that diaper, and you're right up in there, and I don't smell it really. Like it's almost kind of like a joke, where if he poops and you hear it, that's how you know.
Exactly.
Or you feel it if you're holding him. And then I turn to my wife, I'm like, oh, you smell that? And no one smells it, because we don't.
Right.
And so it just thinks I'm making fun of my wife, or I'm like trying to play off my farts on someone else, which is most of what men do.
Nice.
Nice.
Yep.
Quick question: the oatmeal. any flavor on that, or is
No.
it's just plain?
It's
right?
just it's plain oatmeal.
He's
And
not
you
rocking
actually
the apple and cinnamon. He's not rocking the brown sugar.
no, none of that. So what you'll do is you'll actually take that and you'll mix it with and it's like fine grain oatmeal too.
Yeah.
It's not like chunks. And you'll take that and you'll mix it with breast milk.
Ah,
Or probably you
okay.
can do the same thing with formula. And we even like at one point thinned it out with a little bit of water, and then that gets
Mhm.
it to the right consistency.
So they're
And
used to it a little bit more. Yeah.
exactly. And you warm it up to like room temperature or a little bit warmer than room temperature. And when it was actually a little bit warmer, that's when he just went nuts over it. Like
Oh.
I was home with my mother-in-law and we were
Mhm.
feeding him, and it was it's just like slightly warmer than room temperature, and he, big smile, he would actually try and grab it with his own hand, and then like if I took too long between one spoonful and the next, he would kind of shout at me.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
That's hilarious.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I get it, right? Because if you're like doing a bottle or breastfeeding, if you pop them off for like any reason, they are gonna immediately snap, and they will turn on you. They will go from the
Absolutely.
happiest baby to the meanest baby very quickly.
Very quickly. Yeah.
Nice.
So before we get into today's episode, a couple things we want to run by you. First of all, if you have a fun dad story, something surprising, if you have a question for dads, if you're a soon-to-be dad and there's something you're curious about that you can't find online or in a book, because there's a lot of things that you just have to hear from firsthand experience, shoot us an email. We're at dadsplainingpodcast@gmail.com. If you've got a fun story or a question to share, shoot it there, and you just might hear it on next week's episode. So we've also got a few social channels that Brandon here has set up. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, so we are now on Twitter and Facebook. Look out, folks. So on Twitter, you can give us a follow at Dadsplaining Pod. And just as of yesterday, we are now on Facebook, so you can find us. And please like our page at Dadsplaining Podcast on Facebook.
It's the only page on Facebook called Dadsplaining. So if you're having trouble finding it, just search for Dadsplaining and you'll probably find it.
Yeah, but apparently I couldn't do just Dadsplaining for some reason. Had to be Dadsplaining Podcast anyway. So yeah, Dadsplaining Podcast on Facebook. Please like us. We'll post all this kind of stuff here in the future on that page, and then Dadsplaining Pod on Twitter.
And last but not least, if you are listening to us, please don't forget to subscribe, whether you're on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcasting apps. And make sure also, if you're enjoying the content, to give us a rating, preferably a 5-star rating, and leave a review if you want to. That kind of stuff will help us connect with more dads, and it'll extend our reach and be able to keep doing what we're doing every week.
And actually, I think I noticed it on Facebook on the page. You can review that as well. So not just liking it, but you can also review our page. So yeah, do the same. Give us a rating on Facebook, preferably 5-star.
Yeah. So let's dig right in. So last week we left off with delivery and the moments right after the baby came into the world. So today I'd like to talk about those first few days. There's a reason in the movies that they usually end the movie right when the baby's born, because that's like the rise to the dramatic climax, when that baby comes into the world, and then they play like the soft music and the mom and dad give a smile to each other and all the family gathers around.
So
and then,
much happiness forever.
right, and then they roll the credits and you don't see what happens next.
Because that's when the real goes down.
Yeah, let's keep it family friendly. This is a family friendly podcast.
That's when the real stuff goes down.
Yes. So today we're going to talk about those first few days. A lot of times you spend those first couple of days after delivery recovering in the hospital. Every story is different. Sometimes you're there for a day. Sometimes you're there for 4 days, 5 days, a week, depending on complications that can arise. But there's a lot that goes on that you don't really know about until it hits you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a couple of, good things. Like if we just think about like the immediate aftermath, I know we have a bit of a divergence of the stories, so I definitely want to give those two perspectives. Like, on your side, Jesse, you guys went through a C-section. On my side, with my wife, we did not. So like that really like immediate aftermath. I mean, the great thing for us is obviously it's quite an ordeal to give birth.
Yeah.
So right after that, once we moved into the recovery room, by the way, separate room. You do all your laboring and the delivery in one room, and then you move to a recovery room, different room, just in case you didn't know that. My wife, Austin, was actually really in like a good, place. Like she was pretty positive and honestly kind of like up and walking pretty soon. after, like, I think just like the high of obviously going through the birth,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was kind of like that cool down moment in the golden hour.
Yeah.
So we'd already had that. And so she was really just kind of like in a good spot. And I was really happy that, even though it can be a very serious situation that you go through, and, if you don't end up with a C-section, you have that kind of opportunity where you're probably a bit more lucid, like right after. And so that was kind of like the best part is that, think about this, dads and moms, like it's super scary going through the birth, but, assuming all relatively goes well, you can actually kind of recover pretty quickly. I mean, you're not going to leave the hospital right after, but you can kind of be moving around. You can interact with the family. You can obviously interact with your kid as much as you want to.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more on that later. But that was kind of the nice thing for me is it kind of quickly moved into a nice positive situation. What was kind of the difference for you guys, Jesse?
Yeah. So having a C-section birth, there was kind of a process. So we were there for, I want to say, 4 days after the birth. So he was born Thursday evening around 6:15. We were there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We went home on Sunday. The first evening, Thursday, Ashley was pretty well unconscious still from all of the pain medication and the epidural. She actually kept the epidural in. They kept it in her for I think the first couple of days.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I think it just had to do with the C-section.
Sure.
In fact, she had a lot of wires in her.
Yeah. Okay.
How do I say this? It affected her mobility severely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like we were talking about a couple weeks ago about how before the birth, you are attached to this IV pole that's got all the tubes and the pouches and the liquids, and it's all running through you, and you have to kind of carry it with you everywhere you go.
Right.
That happened, of course, after birth as well. And with Ashley having a C-section birth, her mobility is restricted from a muscle standpoint. Her
Right.
muscles are very much in recovery mode.
Yep.
And it hurts a lot to walk, and that's compounded by the fact that so when you have a natural birth, a lot of that fluid that is your body creates for the baby is, for lack of a better word, expunged.
Yeah.
That doesn't really happen with a C-section birth. So
okay.
Ashley was still kind of filled up with a lot of those fluids, and it was causing a lot of gas issues and a lot of intestinal, abdominal pain. So nurses would have to be constantly coming in like once an hour and mashing on her stomach to kind of move some things around. And they would even do it in her sleep. Sometimes they wouldn't, they would just walk in middle of the night. She's catching an hour's nap, and they'll just, no gentle nudge, no, excuse me, honey, do you mind if I push on your tummy here? No, just, okay, that should be better.
Gosh, what a lovely visual.
Yeah.
Stranger walks in and just starts pressing on you.
And she would have to, carry that IV pole with the wheels on it to the bathroom. And it was really hard for her to even get up and walk. I want to say it was like 8 feet.
Right, it's right there.
To the
much.
bathroom.
Yeah.
And that would cause a lot of pain. So she would need a nurse. She would need me. Our parents would have to kind of help her go to the bathroom. And then a nurse would have to hold all of her stuff while she tries to sit down and use the bathroom. I mean, it's an instant lack of independence. So Ashley would also have to keep moving. As painful as it was, the doctors told her to keep moving. So that was to prevent scar tissue from regrowing quickly in its place around her scar.
Gotcha.
So she would have to get up, and what we would do is we would actually walk laps around the maternity ward.
Sure.
With David in his sort of rolling bassinet that we had there in the room.
That's cute.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. A lot of times we would do it together, and I would help her push, and we would have to stop and take a break, and then sometimes in the middle of the night I'd be catching a nap, and she would get up and go out and do it on her own.
Sure.
And she was talking to me today about this, and she remembers to kind of keep it fun. She would narrate it. She would talk to David the whole time.
Yep.
And we're coming around the turn, and we're coming down the final stretch.
Love
and
that.
She would time it like looking at the clock, and she'd make sort of a figure 8 through the hallways, and then get back in. And she would actually, God, she was in the middle of this and all the pain she was going through. She was so sweet. She would leave a note on the door for the doctors and nurses to see, to say, I'm not in here. I'm out walking. Please don't come in and wake up my husband. Because I was so sleep deprived, and both parties are, but I was at the point where I could not function. Like I was delirious. I had trouble standing up at one point. Because I mean, it's such an emotionally draining experience having a baby, especially for the mother, but for the dad too, really. And you don't get any sleep, and you're on your feet for the whole time, and you're just wrecked.
Wow. Yeah, I'm like overwhelmed just like hearing your story. And even though I know you guys, like I didn't really know the intimate details of that situation. I was like, man, wow, power to your wife.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out to Ashley. Like that's incredible. Like if you don't believe us about the power of women and the wives in these situations with having kids, like going through a C-section and then be like walking around the hospital in pain and like having fun with her kid, like that's awesome. Great shout out to her. And of course, not that I'm not going to give any kudos to my own wife, Austin, for what she went through. I mean, I say that, she was up and kind of being able to move about, but like, I don't think she actually set foot outside of the recovery room for the like 2 days we were there.
Yeah.
So, because we didn't go through the C-section, some of the, concerns were a little bit lessened on the aftermath for her. And so we were there, we delivered Monday night, and then we were there all day Tuesday. And then I think we left like midday Wednesday. So it's actually relatively quick if you just think about that kind of time frame. But to me, like when you're in that recovery room, it's a whole nother world. And just kind of like in the delivery room, like time doesn't matter as much.
Stops,
like
yeah.
essence of like control is out the window, and you're just kind of at the mercy of, I think, Jesse, you put it correctly, like the flood of people.
Yeah.
That's kind of the only way you can tell time is like when people are coming in and out. And I do want to point out really quickly that, like, thank you so much for the nurses because they are amazing. Not that the doctors aren't either, but the nurses are the ones that are always in there, and they're in there so regularly. Like it's amazing. Like, they're checking on us every hour. It's annoying for sure when you're trying to sleep, but, like, they will do it for you. They are there for you, and they're taking care of you, and they have so much information to share.
Some of them.
Some of them?
Some of them are fantastic. So I shared the story on the first episode, so I won't delve too deeply back into it. But we had one particularly crotchety nurse that at one point came in because this was the day after, I think this was either Friday or Saturday after David was born on the Thursday. I'm changing his diaper. I get a little poop on my hand. This is the first time another human being's poop has touched me. So like I kind of instinctively back away from the bassinet. And, of course, a stream of pee comes out of my child and, covers the wall and the dresser and everything. So my wife pages a nurse and is like, hey, look, we haven't slept. We're freaking out. It is going down in here. Please come in and help us. So this nurse comes in, like, grumpy and goes, what are you doing? I'm like, what answer do you want me to give you here? I'm covered in poop and pee. And she's like, why are the blinds closed? And we're like, because my wife is half naked and trying to feed a baby, and there are construction workers outside. And she's like, no, open the blinds. He needs to see the sunlight so he knows what sunlight is.
Oh, my God. Perfect.
So
yeah.
She was not our favorite. But then we had on, I want to say on the third night, we had like this pure angel of an RN, I guess, who she was so personable and so attentive to Ashley and knew, like, seemed to know things that the other ones didn't know.
Yeah.
So Ashley had, I mentioned, like, extreme gas issues because they would have to give her, on top of everything else, they would have to give her these gas pills.
Okay.
And they would, it would just, all the gas would build up in her stomach and it would cause so much pain. So she was the one who came in, like, night 2 and said, well, have you been taking the pain medicine? And my wife was like, I didn't know that was an option. No one offered me pain medicine.
What?
It was
oh my gosh.
I want to say like some sort of opiate, and not morphine, but something like that, something that you could take that
something
would
a little bit more intense, like because we were getting like Advil basically. But that's pain relief. We really needed it. So I'm guessing, a little bit more of a kick.
Yeah, we got the hard stuff.
Yeah.
But we didn't know it was an option until she told us this. And then on top of that, the gas, she was like, I know what'll clear that right up. You're going to take some prune juice. You're going to mix it with some apple juice. You're going to mix it with a little milk of magnesium. Magnesium?
Yeah, magnesium. Yeah, I think so.
Milk of whatever it is. Milk of Malaysia. And and you're going to mix that all together, and you're going to warm it up and drink that. And she did, and it worked. instantly. Like, I mean, not instantly, but
Yeah, well, yeah.
But the gas dissipated, and nothing else had worked. Nothing else that the nurses were doing helped until this amazing nurse came in and just
Sure.
and solved the problems and just listened to her and took care of her and really treated her the way that you want to be treated when you go to a hospital. So shout out to that nurse. I think her name was Raven at Northside Forsyth.
Very cool. Thanks, Raven.
Just really doing a great job.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the thing I kind of want to highlight, right? Like, the nurses are like magic to me, is like, because we knew nothing at this point. We just were given my wife and I were kind of joking, like, right after the birth, like, they're going to let us, like, keep this kid? Like, we get to leave with this kid? Like, they trust us? What? Like, if we're okay to have this kid and take him home? But, even in the, like, 2-day period or those first couple of days in the hospital, we're trying to learn all the things.
Yeah.
And so, like, the nurses are like magic because they would always seem to, like, have the answer to something like what you're talking about, Jesse. I experienced the same kind of thing where, like, only this nurse we had for the first, like 12-hour shift we were there was, like, was able to get our son to, like, latch and breastfeed. And, like, we couldn't figure it out. We had no idea what to do for latching and feeding. And so for the first couple of, times, she was there every single time that we were going to do a feeding. And she was the one that always made the magic happen with getting him to feed. And then when, like, her shift was over and, like, changed to somebody else, I was like, no, they can't take away the magic nurse. The second nurse was also super helpful and did, as well, but like that first nurse had like a touch to she had like a specific touch where it just worked really well. Or teaching us how to swaddle for the first time. Like swaddles are super critical. So you always see the pictures of them in like the commercials where they're in like the stereotypical like hospital nursery and they're swaddled and whatever. So like your kid's gonna be swaddled for a large portion of those first few days. But spoilers, there's no like hospital nursery room. I mean, maybe there is at your hospital, but most hospitals I don't think even have them anymore. Or if they do, it's not like where they just wheel in like the bin that they have the kid in. Like that's not really like that anymore. They stay with you. They stay with you in the room that your kid does.
Well, did they give you the option of like watching him for a couple of hours while you guys get some sleep? Because
I think
they did
we got
that
option, but I'm just trying to illustrate like the difference of like the stereotype of like 50 babies in a room and people are passing
no, that doesn't
by.
happen.
People are passing by and like looking through the glass. Like that doesn't happen. Like there's a nursery, but it's like super low key. There's like a couple of kids they're like watching for you for a limited period of time, and it's more like daycare, but it's for a newborn infant. It's not like the fleet of babies in their blue and pink hats.
No,
like,
that's true.
I was kind of wondering, like, how's that? Like, I don't want him to leave, like, and because it was kind of cool because you're like, oh, he's right there, and they stay with you. But at the same time, there's the pressure of like, oh, we're in charge.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Yeah, it's like, oh, he's here in my arms, and go, don't let him die.
And he's not leaving. Yeah, he's gonna stay with you.
Oh, hey, real quick. So my wife commented on Facebook, the drug that they gave us was Percocet. The drug that the miracle nurse told us that we could have was,
Percocet.
of course, Percocet.
Good.
I think that's the slogan for Percocet.
In the morning when you wake up, a little Percocet in your cup. That's all you want. So speaking of the kid always being there, can only imagine that this happens for anyone that goes through this. But I wanna share my reaction of something that happened in those first kind of not initial moments, but like certainly in the first like day or two. So going back to what I just mentioned about like the baby kind of being with you the entire time. They have to like run tests or they have to check on things like check the heart rate or check the, whatever it is about the kid. I like already forget all the different things they do, but they run different tests and they do different things to check on them and make sure that they're okay or like give them those first couple of shots, the first kind of things that they need to do or like that first bath. They will give your kid the first bath. So you know that they're going to take them and they're going to do that. And you think about, okay, just not in that first golden hour, right? You want to have that golden hour and then they can do whatever they want. But what ended up happening for us is, talking about the wave of people coming in and out, they would come in and say, oh, we need to take him to do this thing. And we're like, oh, man, like, I don't want to leave. I don't want him to leave. And they'd always say, oh, we'll be done real quick, like maybe 30 minutes. He'll be right back. All I got to say is they lied
Mhm.
because I was like hours later wondering, where is our kid?
Yeah.
And so it just got to be like a weird situation where like
Mhm.
they would take our kid and I'd be like, where's our baby?
Yeah.
Like, when is he coming back?
Mhm.
And it would be like 2 or 3 hours. Like, this is way more than 30 minutes. You lying to me, nurse. What are
Mhm.
you doing with my kid?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah. You mentioned big, crowds of people coming in, and that
Mhm.
was definitely one thing that happened to us that we felt was um really not a very positive experience.
Mhm.
So, you have a circle of people around you after you have a baby, and in that inner circle is your immediate family.
Yeah,
It was
of
my
course.
parents, my wife's parents, our brothers would come by,
Mhm.
cousins, aunts, uncles, eventually, that kind of stuff.
Everyone you've ever known.
Exactly. So they come in and out and they visit, and those are the ones that like those are the really important moments. I want to make sure that, they get to spend that immediate quality time with them.
For sure.
On top of that, there are the doctors that come in and out,
Mhm.
to administer the medicine and to check up on you and to ask you questions and to make you fill out the paperwork. Because
Oh, yeah.
that's the big part that they don't show in the movies is, hey, okay, go ahead and fill out these forms, sign these waivers, give
Just
us
a
your
couple 20 documents.
billing information, release
Triplicate.
forms, all that kind of stuff. And they're doing that at the same time that the nurses are coming in and checking you and giving you more medicine
Right.
and, fluffing your pillows and making you get up and stretch and making you exercise and, making sure that you know how to breastfeed your child properly. And then on top of that, there is the hospital photographer that comes in and says, hey, would you like us to take your newborn photos? And then they come back and take your newborn photos, and then they come back and show you the newborn photos, and then they come back again and say, this is how much it'll cost if you want to take these photos home with you. And what we noticed was that no one at the hospital is really communicating with each other. I don't know if
Right.
this happened with you
Mhm.
guys, but they would all come in one, like not one after the other, but all at the same time. So a
Felt like
doctor
it
would,
was like super coordinated to be as inconvenient as possible.
yeah,
Almost as if like they weren't coordinating, but because they weren't coordinating, it was so coordinated that they came like in perfect synchronicity of shifts, like one and then 10 minutes later the next one, then 10 minutes later the next one.
See, ours would overlap with each other. Like, we would have a
okay.
doctor in, and then a nurse would come in and realize that they couldn't do anything because the doctor was there, so they would turn around and
Okay.
leave. And then our parents were there, and that was what we wanted, but they were there at the same time as two doctors, two
Yeah.
nurses, the photographer, the
Yeah.
clown making the balloon animals, and
There was a clown for you guys?
no, I just threw that.
Okay, I was like, wait a minute, I didn't get a clown.
No, there's no clown. Sorry.
Sorry. I would have enjoyed that.
But the room gets so packed, and it's not a big room to begin with,
No.
that you really, especially on the mom, you feel claustrophobic.
Yeah.
And there are certain moments that you really just need to be alone with that baby.
Mhm.
That was something that we realized pretty quickly, is that we needed to be able to tell people, look, get out, give us a minute. We need some time.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then at times I would even kind of go out with the family, like because my wife would have to, the nurses would have to do something. So she'd be
Sure.
like, okay, well, take my parents out and go get some dinner. So we would do that, and we would get her some time, just one-on-one time with the baby.
That's nice.
And, those are things that are really important. So in those moments, those first few days after the baby comes, you're going to be surrounded by people. Make sure that when you're feeling the need to get them out, that you tell them to get out, and they'll do it.
Yeah, and even if they won't, still speak up. Like, you are responsible for this person now, and the burden is on you. The family loves you, and they're going to want to hang out with you and see this, great kid or their grandson or whatever, but they're not going to go home with him and care for him every single day. Like, that's going to be you. So, like, make sure you get the time, and you get that moment. Sorry, you mentioned something about the crampedness of the room. So like, just quickly riffing off of that, thinking about how claustrophobic it is. I don't know what the setup was like in the recovery room for you guys, but there's basically like just the big bed that my wife was on, and like the main bed of the recovery room, and then there were like two chairs, one of which folded out into like a pseudo bed. And so I would be on like the pseudo bed chair at night. My wife, of course, is in the normal bed. And then like if anybody else was there, they were in a chair, like one other chair. And that was kind of it. And so yeah, it gets super cramped, and you want to be with your person and with your kid.
Yeah.
And you're not like co-sleeping or whatever right there. Your kid's like over up to the side, like a foot away from you, which feels far away.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually, what ended up happening is like on that the second night, not the first night, but the second night, I actually like climbed into the bed with my wife because normally we sleep together, and it's weird not doing that all of a sudden. And the nurse so we do that, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm just gonna do it. We're super cramped. It's like a twin bed basically, two of us in there with all the cords and stuff. And then the next morning, like the nurse walks in, she's like, "Whoa, when did I get 2 patients?" I'm just like, yeah, sorry, there's like not enough room in here. I gotta be comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm just not used to sleeping alone.
Yeah, it's nice that you had a sort of a fold-out chair bed kind of thing. I had a bench in the room with a cushion on it that was probably about the thickness of a slice of bread. And then we had one other chair too, and then we had kind of a countertop thing in the corner of the room that was completely filled up by our suitcase.
Yeah.
The bag, all the stuff, the clothes, and all that fun stuff, and then everything that they would keep giving us, as well as all the gifts that people would bring in, and all of the towels and everything, and the swaddles that they give you. So we ran out of room in the room pretty quickly, and just having tons of people in there kind of compounded that.
Yeah. Last thing I got to ask about the hospital stay experience. What was the food situation like for you guys?
So the food that they actually gave her was not that great. I remember like her asking me to go out and get stuff for her, and I don't remember exactly what I did, but I know that downstairs they had a cafeteria that wasn't half bad. It was kind of Southern cooking, kind of home cooked meals, that kind of stuff, and that was okay. But it was kind of, you're taking your chances. It is what it is. You don't have that many options. Although I did raid the galley a couple times, like the little the room that they have that's like full of stuff just for the moms and the dads. It's like little boxes of cereal and the apple juice and the orange juice.
Oh, I didn't have that. That sounds exciting.
Milk things and crackers. I mean, it's nothing exciting.
Well,
like it's it's the kind of stuff that if you put it in your kid's lunchbox, they'll look at you and say,
you don't love me? Like,
yeah. But
where's the Lunchables?
When you're on no sleep and you haven't really eaten anything in the past couple of days, it tastes pretty good.
I bring this up because I gotta go off and talk about how surprisingly good the hospital food was that we had. Like, we were at Piedmont Hospital here in downtown Atlanta, and it was like, I couldn't believe it. Like, for my wife, the mom who had just delivered, she would get obviously like their meals brought to her, and she would order off like this menu, like a fancy menu, as if you were like at a restaurant, and she could pick anything she wanted.
Oh my God!
Off the menu, and so she would rack up, like a main entree, a side, a dessert, sometimes 2 desserts. Like, she could get whatever she wanted. Unlimited food for her, and this is for the 3 meals of the day.
Oh my
Breakfast,
God.
lunch, and dinner getting brought to her. And like that first like big dinner meal that she had was like pot roast with like delicious like sauce coming off of the beef with the carrots and the potatoes, and I'm like, what in the heck is this? This was like the fanciest like I ever would have thought of. Like, I wouldn't have even thought that they would be that fancy for a hospital.
Yeah.
And like all the stuff that she could order was kind of like that. Now, they didn't have like 30 things for her. She had to pick from kind of like 5, things, and they didn't change. But, only being there for 2 days, like, I couldn't believe like how off the charts this place was. And, so for me, I don't get that. I'm just a dad. I'm just a guy who's in the room. But I did get to go to the cafeteria, like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I've kind of, the mileage there varied, but like, it was nice because they covered the expense of that too for me, which I thought was nice. So
that is nice.
That's like a nice. It's like a nice tidbit.
I didn't get that. Ashley just commented on the Facebook Live feed, one word: sucked. So that tells you her experience with.
I mean, is
it
like 5-star? I'm not talking about 5-star, but I'm like,
yeah.
This
Bobby
is a
Flay is
hospital,
like the chef at your hospital or something like that.
Right. It's just like I couldn't believe it, and so guys, it's all about the food, obviously. So for the foodies out there having kids, Piedmont Hospital. There you go.
So I got a little bit more detail from Ashley here in the comments. She said I wasn't allowed to have certain things since I had surgery. So they gave me a big menu I'd order and then get something completely different from what I ordered because that was the thing that was allowed.
Oh,
so
man.
they would give her the illusion of choice, but really it was just like, okay, well, here's what your body can handle right now.
That's cruel. Oh my gosh.
Cruel and unusual.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so we endured all that for a few days, and Sunday came around, and it was time to get discharged, and went through all of the fun paperwork that they don't show in the movies. And so one thing that you will probably hear if you're an expecting dad, but make sure you listen, is that you are not allowed to take your baby out of the hospital if you don't have a car seat, and if you don't have the right car seat, and if it's not inserted properly and safely in your car. A lot of dads will end up scrambling and, having to run to Bye Bye Baby or Babies R Us, which doesn't exist anymore. I assume. I know Toys R Us is out. Is Babies R Us out?
Yeah, same thing.
Babies Were Us.
Yeah. Ooh, deep. R.I.P. Sorry, guys.
Yikes. But anyway, so make sure you do that. So we had the car seat. I actually, so to backtrack a little bit, I had our local fire station have a guy show me how to install it properly. I mean, we live out in the sticks a little bit in Cumming, Georgia.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel like most counties will do this. They'll have someone, usually it's a fireman, who is trained in how to properly install your car seat and how to properly use it and where to put it and how to use the anchors and how to use the seatbelt if you don't have the anchors and all that fun stuff.
Right.
So I learned ahead of time and brought my wife in before we had the baby, and she learned ahead of time too. And then, when it came time to take him home, we knew how to do it. So put him in the car seat, take him home, and that was a really interesting experience. That first car ride out with the baby in the car.
Yeah, I mean, so it sounds like Jesse and fam took the right way to do things. Myself and my wife, we knew that we should go to the fire station and take advantage of that, and we did, but we did it about 2 weeks after he was born.
Oh.
So, we got to the last couple of days, and we had said, we need to go to the fire station, we got to do this, and then we're like, we probably have to, schedule it or something, blah, 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 that's too hard, right? Someone's going to do it for us for free, but we have to drive all the way over there, that's too much effort. So I just did it myself, read the instruction manual, went through that with my dad, who's, OCD and,
nice.
Follows the manual and everything, and, my God, I think we spent 2 hours trying to figure it out and how to put it together.
It's not as easy as it looks.
Good God, no, not at all. It's so hard. And the sad part, of course, is because we didn't have anyone telling us what we should be looking out for. We did it one way, and then we did it another way, and we did it not the wrong way, but you'll learn that when it comes to the car seat, there's the lap method where you can stretch the seat belt over it to secure it to the car, to the actual seat of the car, or you can do the anchor method. And so I didn't know anything about the anchor method, or that it existed, or that it was so accessible via my own car. Because if you have a car that is not too old, and I caveat this because I have checked, we have a 1999 Honda Accord. It does not have the anchors.
Right.
They didn't exist back then. But, 2014 Honda does. So that's the other car we have, and it could not be easier. So it's a complex process the first time you do it, but it's actually really elegant how it works.
Yeah.
If you do the anchor method, there's two tiny little seat belts basically that come out the back of the car seat, and there's these little metal anchors that are kind of like a U, like a metal U, buried into the depths of the seat cushion of the car, and that's where you kind of snap it in for the anchor method. So it's direct connected to a hard and fast point in your car that's already there. So that couldn't get easier. And then you're just tightening a little bit.
Yeah, and it's so funny because for the basically 10, 11 years that I've been driving a car up until this point, I never knew that those
I had
were there.
no idea those were there.
It's oh, wow, that's been there literally the entire time that I've had a car.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And I felt extra stupid because there's actually a freaking symbol on the car seat in my car that says basically the symbol for this is where you put it. There's so guys, go look at your car, look in that second row, if you've got one,
Mm-hmm.
and take a very close look at like the point where the top and the bottom of the seat kind of join together.
Yep.
And you'll probably see a little tiny circle that kind of looks like a seat belt symbol on it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you put your hand kind of in between the cushions, you'll feel the metal anchors that we're talking about. That's where they are. And you're welcome, mind blown that those exist, first of all, and that there's a freaking symbol there to tell you where it is.
Yeah.
Never felt stupider than when I realized that there's literally like a, here it is, idiot.
Yeah, you'll feel the anchors, and if your car is anything like mine, you'll also feel the crumbs of everything you've ever eaten in the back seat of that car.
But you're gonna say you'll also feel the shame of not knowing that you didn't.
Well, there was that too,
recognize
but
it.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So we did not follow the proper method, but we learned later. We finally got that fireman to teach us how to do it, and it was very important because you can follow the instruction manual and you'll get it right and it'll be safe. But it can always be tighter. I would say that's my one piece of feedback on that car seat. It can be tighter than you can ever imagine it can be. Like even using the anchors, you still have to adjust the strap and like pull it super tight. It can always be tighter than you can possibly imagine. You really got to like Hulk it when you're pulling it tight to make sure you get it as tight as you can. And only after we had like the people at the fire station show us that I realized like, oh, okay, it was actually much looser when I did it myself. Now, maybe you could argue that that's just like my bicep versus fireman's bicep, but I feel like, it just the fact that I knew you could go even tighter was important.
So people will also tell you with that car seat, they'll tell you where to put it, obviously, you're not going to put it in the front seat. That kid's not going to be in the front seat until he's like 10 years old.
No.
So it's going to go in the back seat. They will tell you most likely that the middle seat is the safest because it is, just because it's the furthest away from anywhere that the baby might get impacted.
Yep.
But as my fireman told me in Forsyth County, if you want to put them on the left side or the right side, it's also very, very safe. The middle's the safest, but the difference is negligible. So we had ours on the driver's side, and that was his advice, like especially for the mother's car. She recently either delivered a baby naturally or had a surgery. Her range of motion is not going to be what it once was, and there's going to be some pain. So for the mom's car, you want to probably put that baby behind the driver's seat. In my opinion, everyone's got their own kind of way of doing things, and mine was actually on the passenger side because my legs are a little bit longer than my wife's, and I want to kind of have the ability to kind of scoot back. And once that car seat's in there, really, you can't scoot your driver's seat very far back.
Very important to think about. Like dads, we tend to be taller than the moms, but even you as a dad, like if you're over 6 feet, I'm just under 6 feet. You around the same?
I'm 5'9".
Okay, you're even a little bit less than me.
Yeah,
sorry,
thanks for bringing up that.
Bring that up. Give people a nice visual as they're learning about what we sound like. They're also getting a visual. So I'm almost 6 feet. Jesse's a munchkin. But
Nice.
it's very important because like I like to have my seat when I'm driving like all the way back because I can stretch my legs and reach the pedals and it's more comfortable. But yeah, it's really awkward when you put the car seat in and then you jack your your seat back and you ram into that car seat behind you and you're like, oh God. So be very careful and consider putting him on the passenger side. We actually have him in the middle. Our son is in the middle.
That's good.
And I enjoy kind of having it because it does make it easy to see. It's easier than if he's right behind me in the driver's side. Yeah. I don't have to turn like 360 and check him. Yeah. I can like check him kind of through the rear view mirror a little bit. And then I actually have, the mirror that's on the headrest in the second row so that you can kind of angle it and see the kid via that. So you look through the rearview mirror at another mirror, which is pointing at your kid, and to look at.
Kind of like when you go and get your hair cut and they give you the mirror and then they spin you around so you can
right,
look at the
and
mirror.
they're holding a mirror to a mirror.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I never could find myself that way. I had a trouble looking through like two mirrors. I'm like, looks good, but I couldn't see myself.
I always just take their word for it.
Perfect. Yeah. There was only one time in my life it didn't go right. You can ask me about that later. But so that was a trip to kind of get used to. And I'll just mention one thing about the mirrors that you can have. Like everyone I know has them. Do you guys have one?
We have them. We haven't installed them yet.
You haven't installed it? Okay, it's not that hard. So it's if you have a minute, like it took just a couple minutes to get it figured out. But so it's helpful for like a frame of comfort, right? but I actually was told by the firemen that it's actually a danger
Yes.
to have them. Is this why
Yep.
you haven't installed them?
Yes, so we were told the same thing. So okay, so I don't know if your fireman did this to you, but ours sort of gave us trick questions
Oh,
to kind of
no.
make sure we were paying attention. So he says to my wife, he says, did you get the mirror so that you can keep an eye on the baby? And she said, yes, of course. And he says, okay, well, tell me this: when you're driving the car, who is the most important person in the car? In terms of the life to take care of. And of course, she says, the baby, because I said the same thing too when he asked me that separately.
Sure.
And he says, no, the driver. Here's why. If the driver goes, everyone goes. So if your eyes are on the baby, that's, that there are benefits to that, and that's a good thing, and that's a safe thing, if you're keeping an eye on him, keeping him safe, but not if it's to the detriment of you paying attention to the road.
Right.
Because if something flies up in front of you and your eyes are on the baby, that's going to be a big problem. So that was one thing. He was like, it's not like it's not safe to have it. It's not like you're making a bad decision if you put that mirror there, because, it is useful and it is safe. But he just wanted to put that in our ear that, like, that's not the only thing that you need to be keeping an eye on. You've still got to be a good driver. You've still got to keep your eyes on the road. I mean, me being rear-ended twice in the past month, I know how important that is, to keep an eye not just on what's ahead of you, but what's behind you. And I'm honestly kind of a distracted driver as it is. Like, I have a bad habit of looking at signs on the road and reading people's bumper stickers, and I get easily distracted. So,
and not even mention phones.
One great benefit to coming home from the hospital with that new baby is that people like to come visit and bring you things.
For sure.
So when we had our baby, your wife Austin was still pregnant. You guys actually made us this delicious, like, it was a soup with the tortellini pasta in it or something like that.
Oh my gosh,
and
love that soup.
It was amazing. And then you just brought us this big, giant Tupperware thing of it, and we kept it in our freezer. And like every couple of nights, we would open it up and take some, and our family would do the same thing. And then we got to return the favor with you guys and bring you guys a nice home cooked meal.
Absolutely.
When you brought Noah home from the hospital. So you get a lot of visitation from the friends and family. But at the same time, you do want to keep that in check.
Yep.
It does come to a point where enough is too much, and there's also certain things you want to keep in mind in terms of small children, because your baby is not yet vaccinated at that point. You can't just have all of your friends come over and bring their toddlers to meet the newborn, because those toddlers are just walking cruise ships for germs, and you don't want someone to bring in something that your kid is not immune to yet.
For sure. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge you're going to face. It kind of goes along with the sleep deprivation, right?
Yeah.
Like, you want support and help from your family and your friends, but you also can be very easily overwhelmed. I know that first week for us was probably like the worst, because everyone was there. Like, every day another set of the family was coming over, and we felt like we had to accommodate them. And we wanted to, right? Like, in our hearts, but we were so tired. We didn't really want them to like stick around too long. But how do you break that to a new grandparent or something like that? And I know we specifically had, an incident or two where, like, our family was just around and other things were happening with our son, and we needed to be able to deal with it ourselves, and they were kind of just there up in our space, and we really needed them to not be.
Oh yeah.
And it maybe didn't get handled perfectly in the moment, but like, we're running on no sleep.
Yeah.
So like, as a new parent, be a little forceful up front, set boundaries, establish like times when people can come by.
Yeah.
If you have something like a meal train, like set up, okay, you're always going to come around 5 or 6. By the way, say goodbye to having dinner at 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. You want to be asleep by that point.
Yeah.
So have people come over early in the evening, and they will get the expectation is to not stay. So that's kind of nice to have people come in the early evening, because they know at least you need to sleep.
Yeah.
If they come over during the day, though, just kind of like set some boundaries, and don't be afraid to be forceful about asking people to leave if they have to.
So that does it for today's episode of Dadsplaining. Hey, Brandon, what are we going to talk about next week?
So next week, we're going to talk about what happens when you decide to finally go back to work. And sometimes that decision is not up to you. But we're going to talk about what it's like, specifically from the dad point of view, because they tend to be the first ones that go back. What is it like once you're back at work and kind of being away from your new family for the first time?
Nice.
Hey, if you like what you're listening, be sure to subscribe to us wherever you find your podcast needs. Also, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter. Or if you'd like to go old school, drop us an email. You can find us at dadsplainingpodcast@gmail.com.
So until next time, hey, Brandon, I got a joke. Why can't you hear a pterodactyl go to the bathroom?
I think I know, but I'm going to let you tell me anyway.
Because the P is silent.
Oh, no one saw that coming.
All right, thanks for listening.